This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of Real Estate Investing 365. Today I got with me Tiffany Alexy. She's from Raleigh, North Carolina. She began her career in real estate at the young age of 21 years old. Now she runs her successful brokerage. She was named multi-million-dollar top producer at Fathom Realty in 2016, 2018. And now she owns a mix of commercial and residential properties. So Tiffany, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this crazy, when we're recording, it's March, I don't know, what is the date today? 23rd. Yep. So we're right in the middle of the old coronavirus and all the stuff that's going in. So Tiffany's the only one in her office right now. So I appreciate that. But what do you think about that? What do you think about what's going on? Is it affecting you guys there in Raleigh?
So far, it hasn't really affected the real estate market. Most people are working from home now, and I do know some people who have either lost their jobs or they're staying home. They don't know if they will have their job when they get back. Real estate hasn't really been affected. People are still looking at homes. Some sellers have pulled their listings off the market, but not that many. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I think it's just a matter of time. We'll see in the next couple months how things go. I do think there will be a slight change, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I kind of agree. I think I mentioned it on the last episode the last one I recorded, but this will probably come out much further down the road. But, like I mentioned to you off air, we're trying to sell our house right now and in Northern California, and they stopped all showings. And like my friend down the road, he's selling a fourplex and he can't get any appraisers out there because nobody wants to go out to the properties, and the tenants won't let random people in their properties. So it's just everything's being kind of backed up. So, we'll dive into that a little bit more down the road, what you kind of think about how this is going to affect the real estate market. But first, let's kind of dive into how you got started in real estate, where you came from before real estate, and then we'll move into some of your deals.
Sure. So I bought my first property at 21. I was actually a senior in college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. And at the time, I had been accepted to a couple different grad programs at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And so I figured, I was like, well, I know I'm going to be in Raleigh for the next couple years. I don't want to rent necessarily. I don't want to throw money away. What should I do? And so my mom had kind of given me this idea to buy a place and then rent the extra rooms to some roommates. So I kind of took that idea and ran with it. So I had found this place on Craigslist. It was the first place that I saw. And at the time, so this was back in 2011, it was listed for $112,000. It was a 4-bedroom, 4-bath condo, kind of set up like suite style. So each bedroom had its own individual bath. So really the only shared spaces were the kitchen, the living room, and kind of like a little dining area. So I ended up looking at it and negotiating a price with the seller. I ended up buying it for $103,000 with $2,000 towards closing costs. So it ended up being like 101.
Oh, sweet.
And I rented each bedroom, so for $350 base rent. And I lived in one of the bedrooms, so I rented out the other 3. And then we just split utilities 4 ways. So I ended up actually clearing about $200 or $300 a month after, the mortgage and the HOA. And then I was still living there for free.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's house hacking before you probably knew what house hacking was.
Yes.
Well, that's cool. So this was in 2011. That was in Raleigh, you said, correct? Yes. And that was before Raleigh really got popular. I think Raleigh's really hot right now, right? There's a lot of people moving there and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely been growing ever since then.
Yeah, well, that's good. So do you still have that property?
I don't. I actually sold it last year.
Okay. So was your mom into real estate or your family or anything? She was. Okay. So they are in the real estate sales business or?
Yes. So my mom actually is a broker as well. So I grew up kind of shadowing her on her listings and her showings. I just kind of tagged along. So I grew up in the industry, and weirdly enough, I have real estate on both sides of my family. So both on my mom and my dad's side. So it's definitely in my blood.
Okay, cool. No, it
Yeah.
works out. That's good to have. I didn't really have too many people in it, but my aunt, she owned several Century 21 offices.
Oh, nice.
So I'd kind of like, I remember as a kid, I would, help her out at like open houses. I would go and like direct people where to go or stand there and hand out snacks or whatever, like
Yeah.
dumb little things. And I always kind of thought, well, that's kind of cool. But I didn't know anything about rental property at the time.
Right.
She wasn't really into that. She bought commercial, but not
Gotcha.
residential. Okay, so this first property was a 4-unit condo.
Mhm.
Um, how did you end up? You said, oh yeah, you said you went on Craigslist and you just found the first one. Did you call your mom to use as an agent, or did you just call the listing agent, or how'd that work?
Yep. So I called my mom. She got me in as far as the showing goes. And yeah, it was the first place that I saw, the first place that I looked at, in person. And I looked at the numbers and I was like, well, it makes sense. I didn't know anything about, these 1% rules or anything like that. I was 21. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I was like, well, I would still make money after the mortgage and the HOA, even living there. So that's when I pulled the trigger on it.
Okay, and that was a good thing. I mean, it was in 2011, so kind of didn't really matter what you bought. I guess everything was kind of gonna
Very
cash
true.
flow back
Yeah.
then,
I
which
got
was good.
lucky on my timing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So did you end up renting out to just random people, or was it friends or college associates or?
It was a mix of both. So my first renters in there when I lived there, one was a friend from undergrad actually. So she was going to NC State as well for grad school and had posted on Facebook like, "Hey, I'm looking for housing." And so I messaged her, and we ended up living together. And then the other two I actually found on Craigslist as well. So I just put an ad out there for looking for two more roommates. You get your single room, individual bathroom with a shared kitchen and living space.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit because if somebody
Sure.
else is planning on doing that now,
Yeah.
um, what is some things they should look out for? Or how put in the posting to make sure they're not getting like weirdos coming over their house, or something like that.
Yeah, so there you definitely have to be careful. Craigslist, there's a bunch of spammers out there. So I would typically filter the emails, make sure they sounded serious, had actually seemed interested, were asking engaging questions about the property as if they were truly wanting to live there. And then I definitely would meet up with anyone before even looking at the property. So we'd meet in a public space like Starbucks or, Panera, somewhere where we could just chat, especially because they were going to be living with me.
Hmm.
I wanted to just be sure that, they weren't some creepy person.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would just chat and make sure that we're like, okay, do we think we're going to get along? And then at that point, they would come look at the property, and then we continue the process.
Okay. So when you identify some people that want to look at the property, they seem okay. Once they get into signing the contract, how did you get the contract? Did you just get it from like your mom, or did you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
look it up
So
online?
lease, yeah, NC standard form.
Okay. So how can somebody that doesn't like knows, let's say they buy a place, how do you think they can go about getting a lease agreement now? Could they just ask their agent that they're with, or?
So technically, agents are not supposed to give it out.
Mhm.
So that would be something, if you're getting a property manager, they can get the lease signed for you. If not, there's a lot of different like downloadable template forms online.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, you could probably Google it and find the NC standard form. So it's not that hard to find.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they should do is just Google it, or even on Bigger Pockets. I think Bigger Pockets has
Yeah.
um, like forms by state now. Like every state, they have lease agreements and all that stuff too. So
Right.
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
And it's probably, I haven't looked at the Bigger Pockets one, but it's probably modeled off the NC standard form.
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. NC standard for me, North Carolina standard real
Yes.
estate farm. Okay.
Form.
All right, cool. So you ended up doing that. How long did you live in that property with these tenants before you ended up moving out and moving on to your next one?
About 3 years, almost 3 years.
Okay. And then you ended up keeping it because you said you just sold it last year. So you ended up moving out, renting out that extra bedroom. Did you keep it as a by the bedroom rental, or did you move to a whole house?
Yes, so I kept it as a by the bedroom rental the entire time that I owned it.
Okay.
That's kind of how these condos are set up. So a lot of them are rented by the room. Even the property managers who manage these units rent them by the room.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just interviewed this guy named Ricky Beliveau in Boston, and he started out with this kind of by the room thing up there too, because it's a college where he was in a college community, and so there's tons of kids needing, people, needing needing rooms to rent, and you can make so much more money than if you rent the whole place out because you got a bunch of bedrooms. It just works out so much better.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I never had an issue with vacancy because there were so many people looking for just a single room and it's cheap. So it was a win-win.
What about in the summer? Would it kind of die down a little bit in the summer, or people stayed there all year round?
So I would sign 1-year leases with them. So typically the lease would start like August 15th, and then it would run until July 31st of the next year. So the first 2 weeks in August would be for the turn, either replacing the carpet, cleaning the carpet, repainting, fixing minor things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time the tenants would renew. So most of my tenants would stay about 2 to 3 years.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Good deal. So what were did you run into any problems while you had the property, like when you were buying the property, or issues with the property, or tenant issues or whatever?
Yeah. So when I initially bought it, there was a property manager in place. And so I was a senior in college. And of course, knowing nothing, I was like, oh, there's a property manager. Like, it'll be fine until I move in next year. Yeah, that was not smart on my part because I didn't vet the property manager because they had already, come with the property. I just kind of inherited them. And I should have checked on the property more. So I think there was a span of, it was about 6 months where I didn't go see the property. And then the tenants moved out. And I was like, okay, I can show it to, my prospective roommates now. And I showed it to them and I walked in and I was like, oh my gosh. So one of the tenants had to be evicted and there was still like garbage in his room. There was a cookout milkshake on his window, which had to have been there at least 6 months, which was disgusting. And there was still milkshake in there.
A cookout milkshake? You mean like a regular milkshake in a cup that's just been sitting there for 6 months?
Yep, just sitting on the windowsill.
That's disgusting.
So I got lucky. So this was like in the summer, so the AC was cranked all the way up. But yeah, it could have been a lot worse. There was just like writing on the walls. The fans were super dirty. I think they had tried to clean the carpets with bleach because there were these like bleach spots on the carpet. So yeah, it was just a mess. And I should have gone in to look at the property much sooner. And so obviously when I showed it to the tenants, they were understanding because I was like, oh guys, like, this will be taken care of before you move in. But yeah, that was a big mistake on my part.
Yeah, it's amazing how some people, I don't know if they're just raised by like, I don't know, they just don't have to do anything growing up, but like you go into people's places, especially like college students or whatever, some of them are just like, there's like morons, some of them, they just can't take care of anything. I'm like, man, how'd you guys live? I don't know. It feels like my mom made me do laundry when I was young and do all the dishes and clean the house and all that stuff, just so I was at least prepared. But some people are just not that way. So
yeah, I think you have to really try hard to be writing on the walls and leaving trash everywhere. So
yeah,
but there are tenants like that out there.
Okay, so the main moral of that is that you probably should have been checking on the property more, or at least like check with the property manager to say, hey, are you guys doing like monthly checks or 6-week checks or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So after 3 years, you moved out of that property. Kind of how did the story progress for your investment side, and then also you became an agent at some point.
Yes.
How did that all work out?
Yeah. So after that, it's kind of a winding road. I wasn't sure at that point what career path I wanted to follow. And I ended up getting a job down in Charlotte, North Carolina for a very brief interim. And at that point, so I'd gotten my real estate license in 2013. So I was still living in the condo when I got my license. And it was just more to save myself a commission on my deals. It wasn't to become an agent. I didn't have these big dreams of like opening my own brokerage at all. It was just strictly so I could buy my own deals and save the commission. So with that in mind, I'd gotten a job in finance, and I went down to Charlotte for a couple months and I hated it. Um, Realized that the 9 to 5 like corporate life was not for me.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I moved back to Raleigh. This was in 2015. Um, and I didn't have a job lined up, and my mom was like, "What are you gonna do? You're moving back. What are you gonna do for work?" So I was like, "You know what? I'll just sell houses until I figure it out."
Mhm.
Because I'd sold a couple to my friends, just helping them out, not really looking to be like an agent again. I was like, you know what? I've done it before. I can do it. Like, I'll pay my bills and I'll figure something out. And it kind of just took off from there. So that's 2015 was my first like full-time year in real estate. And then ever since then, it's just been building and building on that.
That's awesome. Now you got your own brokerage, so it's all obviously going well, you know?
Yeah.
So what was your next rental property that you ended up buying?
So I actually bought one right across the street from my first property in Trailwood Heights. And I did the same exact thing. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So I lived in the master bedroom and then I rented out the other 2 bedrooms. And then I still kept my first one. So I had the cash flow off of that one as well, which really helped.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've kind of moved along and bought more properties. Like, where are you at now? How many properties you have? And then,
I have 12 units right now.
okay, cool. And then you also have a commercial building. Is that the building your brokerage is in?
So yes, I do own this office condo that I'm in right now, and then I have another building that has a total of 6 commercial units in it.
Okay, cool. So how are you finding all these properties? So they just because you're an agent and they're all on market or networking and off market deals, or how's that work?
Yeah, as a mix of both. Most of them are actually on MLS. So I'm finding most of them on MLS, or there's so being a commercial broker, the commercial MLS is different and it's a lot more expensive. It's like upwards of 1,500 a month. And
Wow.
so there's actually a commercial broker email list that I'm on that it's, like $50 a year, and you can subscribe to it and you just get like emails from other commercial agents. So that's how I got the commercial building, the 6 unit building. It was just an email to all commercial brokers. Um, and then I think, yeah, it's honestly been about 90% MLS and only
Okay.
a couple off market.
Okay, cool. So you had mentioned right before we got on that you just closed on a property that was going to be an Airbnb property. So let's talk about that a little bit because obviously where we're at with the coronavirus, you're probably not going to be renting out to any vacationers
Nope.
anytime soon. But it sounds like you had a backup plan and you can rent it out like short term or long term or something like that. So what type of property is that?
Yeah, so it's a single family home. It's in Durham. And I bought it with the intent of putting it on Airbnb, but I'm super conservative. So I was like, well, I don't know if it's going to work. This is my first time doing Airbnb. I don't know if if I'm too busy for it, if I can manage it. And I was like, what if, something happens that I can't do Airbnb? It would still make a good rental. So it still cash flows. And so at that point I was like, well, I'll just turn it into a normal rental and just keep going.
Hmm.
So it doesn't really cramp my style that I can't put it on Airbnb, or I mean, I could, but I know I wouldn't get any bookings. So it's good to just always have a backup plan.
Yeah, for sure. So how much did you end up buying that property for?
I bought it for 192,000.
192. Okay. And so in Durham, North Carolina, is that a good rental market there right now? Or, tell me about that market a little bit.
Yeah, it is. So Durham's about 20 minutes from Raleigh, and then RTP, so Research Triangle Park, is kind of in the middle. It's a great market for sales and for renting, just because RTP brings so much jobs that people are just moving to the area left and right. So renting, it's a great market as well as Raleigh.
Okay. So tell me the stats on that house. Like what year was it built? It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, you said, all
It's
that
a
kind of stuff.
4 bed, two
Okay.
bath,
4-bed, 2-bath.
single family. It's only about a mile from downtown Durham, so I primarily bought it for the location.
Hmm.
Single family. It was built in 1941, so it's one of the older houses that I've ever owned. But it's really neat because it has kind of that historic charm.
Was it all remodeled when you bought it or are you doing work to it?
It's pretty much updated. It's not, super up to date. So it doesn't have granite. It does have stainless steel appliances, but it just got that like plastic Formica countertop.
Mhm.
But nice hardwood floors, brand new or relatively new carpet. The paint's been refreshed. So the only work I've done to it is I added gutters because it didn't have gutters before. I waterproofed the crawl space because there were it was just like in North Carolina, you have high moisture in crawl spaces, 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So I did that just to preserve it. And what else did I do? The front stairs were very treacherous. So your first like 5 or 6 risers were a normal height, and then your last one you like had to climb a mountain to get to the top of the porch.
Yeah.
And knowing that I was planning to rent it on Airbnb, I was like, I have to get that fixed because someone will be walking up the stairs at night and they'll trip and fall and they'll sue me.
Yeah.
So I had a brick mason come out and even out the stairs. He basically rebuilt the stairs, and then the railings, obviously had to be welded. So did that. What else did I do? There are just some little things here and there that I had my contractor fix. So some caulking, some moisture damage around the door frames. But other than that, it was pretty much turnkey.
Okay, cool. So, were you planning on having a property manager manage that property, or were you just going to do it on the side, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, so I manage all my properties on my own. I used to own a property management company and I sold it last year. So I'm familiar with the process and going from, I think I had close to 100 units under management. So going from that to 12 is like a walk in the park.
So
And
easy, huh?
that's
Yeah.
because I have a team too. So my assistant is really helpful. And most of the time it's her, coordinating the maintenance, and it's pretty easy for 12.
Mhm.
But I recognize that it's not scalable. So as I keep growing that and the busier we get, I'm going to be looking into hiring a manager.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, what is your expected like monthly rent on this place if it's like a long-term rental versus what would the rent have been? What were you expecting it to be with Airbnb?
Yeah, so a long-term rental would be around 14 to 1500 a month.
Okay.
There's no HOA. For Airbnb, I was gonna try to put it on for like 99 a night as a furnished rental. And I was looking at other Airbnbs in the area, and that was actually pretty reasonable because there were like 1 or 2 bedroom places for 99 a night. So to find a 4-bedroom place is a pretty good deal. But
Hmm.
of course, I want to start low and then gradually increase the price because, as a new listing, there are no bookings, there's no history. So people are kind of taking a chance. But then as I was kind of building my clout and my reviews and everything, I was going to continue increasing the price.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's definitely good to get on that. And then I think I had somebody else on a long time ago and they talked about, you start low and then obviously over deliver and then you get your reviews
Right.
up and then you can become
Exactly.
what are they
Yeah.
called? Like a super
Host.
seller, super host. Yeah. I was going to say super seller, super host or something. So, well, that's good. That'll be perfect. Okay. Well, let's talk about real quick, being an agent. I know a lot of listeners, they want to get their agent license, whether it's just to help them buying their own properties or maybe they're looking to move into that career. Um, what's your thoughts on people getting their license as far as just helping them buy their own properties?
Yeah, so I actually cover this in my ebook that's coming up soon. But basically, being an agent, it does cost a lot more money than most people think.
Mhm.
Um, so you've got to go through the pre-licensing class, which is a couple $100. You have to buy the book, which is $100. And then once you're licensed, you can technically transact. You can buy and sell real estate, um, but you'll have to affiliate with a brokerage. And depending on the brokerage, you may have your monthly like desk fees, your office fees. Some of them you have to pay your own E&O insurance. And that's not to mention MLS fees. So here, in order to belong to the Triangle MLS, which is the multiple listing service, you have to be a realtor. So you have to join the realtor like trade association, which is, I believe, about 500 a year between national, state, and local.
Uh-huh.
And so you have to do that in order to even be eligible to join the MLS.
So just so everybody's clear, a realtor is actually like a branded thing from the National Association of Realtors, right?
Yeah,
So just because you get your real estate license doesn't mean you're a realtor until you, like you said, you sign up with NAR, National Association of
exactly.
Realtors, and then all the local stuff that goes along with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you do have to be an agent to become a realtor, but you don't have to be a realtor to become an agent. Do I have that right?
I think so. Sounds right. I don't know. Yeah, but I think they understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on top of that 500, that's just to be eligible for the MLS. So the MLS is another 600 a year, 150 per quarter.
Hmm.
So all in, you're spending about 1,500 a year just to have your license and just to be active with it. And that's if you want MLS access. So it depends on how many deals a year you want to buy, how active you want to be with it, if you want to help other clients buy and sell. If it's, if you're just buying one deal a year, it may not be worth it, honestly, but you have to kind of run the numbers for yourself and figure out, plus your time as well, taking the licensing course.
Yeah.
So it really just depends. It depends on how active you want to be. And I know that's kind of tough to know ahead of time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just know that a lot of new agents kind of underestimate the cost going into it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then so there's a couple of things there that I want to touch on. Is you mentioned E&O insurance is what errors and omissions insurance, I think it's called. And so um, some places make you pay like for your own E&O insurance, or other brokerages, they cover all the E&O. But in recent years, especially here in California, it's super expensive. So I know that if you just have your license here, it's kind of hard to find a brokerage that covers E&O that will let you be on there, hang your license there if you're only going to do one deal for yourself a year, because they're not going to be able to, cover their costs to pay for all that stuff for you. So it might be difficult to find, a brokerage to let you work with them, at least here in California. I know
Yeah.
that's kind of how it's working. But so how did you, oh yeah, what was I going to say? I had another thing, dang it, I was going to mention on that. Arizona missions. Oh yeah, is that, so if you have a spouse, this is what I always recommend too. If you have, like, let's say, like for me and my wife, I have high earner, if you consider it that, for our taxes. So if I was just to be by myself, I wouldn't be able to write off any of my real estate income, because my income per year is higher than like the cutoff for taking advantage of it. But since my wife has her license and she sells our personal properties and manages our rental properties, we can use her as a real estate professional, which in turn doesn't matter what your income is. You can write off your real estate expenses, even if you're making $10 million a year or whatever it is. There's no cap. So that's kind of a good point as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So what about finding a brokerage? What's some tips for that? Like, what should people look for? Because I know you're with Fathom Realty, right? I haven't even heard of them. Are they a local North Carolina brokerage, or?
No. So Fathom is in about 18 or 19 states now.
Okay.
And yeah, I just kind of happened upon them naturally. So I was with a big firm before, and it was one of those, large firms that take half your commission as a split, and have desk fees. You have to pay E&O separately. Kind of one of those old school firms. And I had actually found this real estate startup that I wanted to work with. So they're kind of similar to Redfin, where they're doing flat fee real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And as a new agent, I just wanted to do business. And so I wasn't as focused on like how much I would make per transaction. I just wanted to get transactions, because, you're 25 and you go on a listing appointment, like, people are going to ask you, well, why would I hire you to sell my house? So you have to kind of prove yourself. And that's kind of the point that I was at. And so I met this, startup founder at a networking event, and he had started this real estate platform. And essentially, it was to help clients buy and sell, and then give them like a commission rebate. Well, being with a big firm, they were not going to let me rebate, part of my commission back to the client, because that's money out of their pocket too. And so I wanted to, join the startup. I really saw like what they were doing. And I knew that I could get a lot of transaction volume from it. And so I asked him, I was like, well, I would be willing to switch firms so that I could work with you, but I'm not really sure, who to go to. Like, do you have other agents on your platform? Where are they working? And so he said, Fathom. There's a bunch of agents on our platform that are with Fathom. I will introduce you to them and see if it'll be a good fit. And that was back in 2015, I believe, like the end of 2015. And so I've been with Fathom ever since, because they charge a transaction fee per transaction and not a split. And then there are no like office or monthly fees.
So he was a startup brokerage, or what was?
So, yeah, technically it wasn't a brokerage. It was like a technology platform.
Okay, and then he just kind of like licensed his platform with the agent specifically, and then the agent can kind of work with whatever brokerage they wanted to work with.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was trying to be the Uber of real estate where, they were developing an app where, if a buyer was outside of property and like wanted to see it immediately, they could request a showing in the app and have an agent meet them there like on demand.
Okay.
And then, the other side of it was the agents working on the platform would, because they have that high volume, they would rebate some of their commission back to the buyers.
Okay. So did that end up working out? You still with that
No,
platform?
so they ended up, I think they sold their technology to a larger company a couple years back, and I left to kind of pursue running my brokerage full time. But I did stay on their platform for about a year afterward, until they like sold their technology and kind of branched off and changed forms.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Okay. So what about how long did it take you to end up starting your own brokerage, and how did that process work? Because I'm sure a lot of people, if they're buying rentals, they're kind of entrepreneurial
right,
anyway. So they kind of,
right.
if they're like, hey, maybe that's what the direction I want to go. How did that transition kind of take
Yeah.
place?
So with Fathom, I work with about half my clientele is investors. And so it's like, well, they ask me all the time to do property management, and I've been putting it off. And finally I caved. Cause I knew, I could get the client, could help them buy their investment property, could manage it for them. And then when it came time to sell, we would still have that relationship with them so that we could list their investment property. So it was kind of like an end-to-end solution for clients. And so I decided to get into property management. And with Fathom, they didn't allow me to do property management under their name just for liability reasons.
Mhm.
So they're like, well, you can do property management, but you just have to create your own firm to do so. So at that point, I was like, well, I guess I have no choice but to create my own firm if I want to pursue this. So I started Alexy Realty Group in 2017. And
Okay.
I still affiliated with Fathom, but then all my property management contracts were through Alexy Realty Group.
Okay. So your sales side of it is still a Fathom Realty, but
Mhm.
when you had the property management is Alexi Realty Group.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, so some of the benefits of going with like a bigger brokerage is that um, I guess they have a lot of training built in and different types of things, like Keller Williams, they're kind of known to have like all this training and all this stuff, but that they do take like a percentage, they have their split, which does cap and all these different
Yeah.
weird things. But what are some benefits for a new agent? Like, what should they look for if they're brand new? They don't know anything. Should they go to a big brokerage like KW, or should they like look for a boutique brokerage? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, so it really depends.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different like training opportunities that the big firms have, but that's not to say that the smaller firms don't have it. It's just a matter of what's the best fit. Um, Honestly, if I were doing it all over again as a new agent, knowing what I know now, I would be joining a team because that's how you really get that hands-on learning experience.
Hmm.
Because when you take the course, you take the pre-licensing, you memorize a lot of law, a lot of terminology, all the legal stuff about real estate, but you don't truly know how to work with a buyer or seller, what forms to use, what's the best way to protect them during the due diligence period, all these things that you kind of have to learn on the job,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So looking back, I would have joined a team. I really think I would have gained way more momentum in the beginning just doing that. And a team, it could be a large team, it could be a small team, but to be able to have like a mentor or to be able to work one-on-one with a couple agents that are more experienced and seasoned, that would really, push someone into learning much quicker.
Yeah, for sure. So explain what a team is real quick, because people might not know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I run my firm is a team also, but essentially there will be a team leader and there will be, at least a couple years of experience in real estate. So they know what the marketplace is like. They know how to help clients buy and sell. They've done it. And so they're training agents underneath them to either be buyer's agents, to be listing agents, to be transaction coordinators. There are different roles within a team that, some people can fit. Licensed assistant, and by helping that team leader with their transactions, the agents underneath can learn from them too.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of the way I kind of understand it, and I've shortly worked on a team, kind of, not really, but is that, they have the big brokerage, like the overall brokerage that runs all like the legal resources and everything. And you have your main broker that takes care of that side of the house. But then you have a team, which has a team leader, like you said, and the team leader kind of like he or she can produce the deals. They have some experience. They kind of act as like, they're not necessarily a broker, but they're just kind of like the rainmaker, if you call it, like they bring in the deals. Then they hire buyers and sellers agents under them that they can hand the deals off to. But in return, the team leader gets a split of your commission because they're providing the deals. They're providing most usually like transaction coordinator. They can help you with assistance, and then they can work with you more one-on-one to train you, where a big brokerage might not have the time to like sit down with you and say, okay, this is our scripts and these are what are we going to talk to sellers about and buyers about and that sort of thing. Is that kind of how it works?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Right on. Well, real quick before we move to the last little section here is, since we are in the midst of this little Corona thing and nobody kind of expected this, and it's taken a beating on the stock market, at least as of today, I think we're down like, overall the stock market's 18,000, whereas it was at 29,000, the Dow Jones, which doesn't directly affect real estate right now, but I think it will because everything's tied to that whole overall economy. So what's your thoughts on what's going to happen to the real estate market, maybe locally there in Raleigh?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I really think the next few months will give us a better indication, just because real estate, it is local. It moves slower than the stock market. So it's really going to depend on how long this crisis affects us.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely see, there's unemployment is increasing. People are losing their jobs. Businesses are losing revenue because they're not able to stay open, especially local businesses. And all this is going to affect the economy, which then will affect housing, whether you believe it will or not. We just don't know to what extent it will. So, it's been such a seller's market here in Raleigh for the past 5-6 years
Mm-hmm.
that it could be that this is what was needed to kind of rebalance the market so that, buyers and sellers were more balanced. But again, it's tough to tell, going into the summer, who knows what will happen. But I really think the next couple months will be telling.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I obviously nobody knows what's going to happen, but if you look at all the markets around the country, everywhere it's pretty much been hot. Whether you're in Little Rock, Arkansas, or Boise, or San Francisco, everywhere has been hot. So I think it'll definitely adjust, and which might be a good thing for us buyers, or us investors. I guess, for example, like my partner and I up in Boise, we're under contract on I think 2 houses right now. But we went under contract in them right before this whole thing went.
Yeah.
I think we're still going to close at the same price. We got them off market by direct mail and all that sort of thing. But what we're doing for future properties is we're just like putting in a bigger buffer. You know what I mean? Like our ARV price is going to be 20% lower and our rent is going to be 20% less. So our offers, we might have to go through a lot more offers for a while until we get a deal, but I'm sure we eventually get more deals coming. And then when sellers end up seeing that the economy is going down, maybe it leads the door to seller financing options or something like that. So I don't think this is a time to stop buying, Yeah, right. It just needs to be more conservative and maybe like think about all your options out there, right?
Right. And it could be a good opportunity because we just had one. So in the same neighborhood that those 4-bedroom, 4-bath condos, where I sold my unit, last year, I just saw one get listed this weekend, and it was about 15,000 under market and listed on MLS. And I was like, wait, is that the right price? Because that's really low.
Yeah.
And it was the right price. He saw the market was, the stock market at least was not doing well. He So he just decided to liquidate, and he was like, I just want to sell it. Like, this is the price I want. So obviously it had multiple offers even in this market because of the price.
Mm-hmm.
But we may see more and more of that, the next coming months.
Yeah. Time will tell. So it's maybe exciting as long as you got money going on and you don't lose your job, which would be very sad, or you don't get sick. I mean, that's another thing,
Yeah.
But okay, cool. Well, what about, so the next kind of section that I like to move to is just a couple little questions about, the first is, how do you like to learn about real estate? Is it through like mentorship or Bigger Pockets or books, podcasts? What's kind of your go-to way if you're gonna like learn about your Airbnb process?
Yeah, it's typically blog articles. So I read a lot. That's basically how I've learned that I take in information the best, is just by reading.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's just research and reading what other people have done, talking to other people. But yeah, blog articles are pretty much number one for me.
Okay, perfect. I don't think anybody said blog articles yet in 50 something episodes.
Oh
So
wow.
50 interviews. Most everybody's like podcast and then mentorship, is like what most people say. So blog articles is perfect. I like that because it's kind of like a book, except, short and sweet and kind of maybe more direct sometimes.
Yeah, typically more personal, has more, direct experience. So yeah, that's been how I've been learning.
Perfect. Okay. What about a favorite piece of technology that you use like in your business or personal life that kind of makes everything easier? It could be Instagram or it could be Basecamp or Trello, anything like that.
Hmm. Honestly, I would say like Excel.
Yeah.
Well, I use the Google form of it, but yeah, it's that's basically where my entire life is Excel.
Yeah. It's just the whole Google suite, all their platforms and everything is like, it just makes me, I have an iPhone, but it makes me think maybe I shouldn't have an iPhone because everything I do is on the G Suite or
Right.
whatever. It's like all the Google Drive is so awesome. Maybe a Samsung would be better for that or something. I don't know, but that's just my dumb thought. Anyways, okay. Well, Alexy, thanks for being on here. Where can people find out more about you? You mentioned you have an ebook coming out,
I
all
do.
that stuff.
Yeah, so probably Instagram is the best way. So my Instagram handle is just tiffany.alexy, and you can find my link tree through there, and you can click on all the links. It'll take you to, a sign up link for my book if you're interested in that. Take you to my website. So yeah, Instagram's the best way.
Okay, perfect. And then if anybody's going to look in Raleigh or Durham, North Carolina area, reach out to Alexy and she'll help you find
Yeah,
a
we
house.
love to.
Okay, perfect. Alexy, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
All right.